Hello, I'm Ryan.
And I'm Dillon.
And welcome to the show where we review books and their movie adaptations. One of us reads the book before watching the movie, and the other watches the movie, then reads the book, and then we give you our recommendations for which order gives you the best experience.
All right, and today's episode is Under the Skin. I'm the book boy this time. I read the book first, and then I watched the movie. And the book, as you can see here, Under the Skin, is the debut novel of Dutch writer Michel Faber, published in the year 2000. The book mixes elements of science fiction, horror, and arguably some dark comedy. The story follows a woman named Iserly, who may or may not be an alien, as she trolls the highways of Scotland searching for burly male hitchhikers who she deems as fitting candidates for whatever she's up to. And the book was popular enough to receive a movie adaptation later.
Yeah, so the movie adaptation was from 2013, directed by Jonathan Glazer, written by Jonathan Glazer and Walter Campbell, loosely based on the novel by Michel Faber. Starring Scarlett Johansson as an alien who lures men to their demise, and that's basically the premise there. It's listed as number 61 on BBC's list of 100 greatest films of the 21st century.
That's really good.
And for the ratings, Rotten Tomatoes, it has an 84 with critics and a 55 with the audience.
Kind of a split there.
Yeah.
Wow, 84 critics, 55 audience. I forgot to mention the Goodreads score. The book Under the Skin has an average rating of 3.73 out of 5 stars on Goodreads based on user reviews. So now do we want to
give our ratings?
Ratings. I'll go first. I read the book first, then watched the movie. So I gave the book Under the Skin by Michel Faber an 8.5 out of 10, and I gave the movie a 5 out of 10.
Okay. I watched the movie first and then read the book. The movie I gave a 10 out of 10, and the book an 8.2. So again,
Wow.
We're on almost the same page on the book.
That's really interesting. And again, a big split on the movie.
A big split on the movie, depending on who watched the movie first. It's the same thing as last
Definitely
time.
has an effect.
Yeah. So now we're going to go into spoilers as we discuss
Yes,
our
spoiler
ratings.
alert territory.
So we'll give you the time code to skip to if you want our recommendations at the end. Otherwise, you're going to be majorly spoiled for both of these.
So if you care about spoilers, if you haven't read or watched these and you care about spoilers, you don't want them spoiler, skip to the end and see our final conclusions and recommendations that are spoiler free. Now we're going to talk about the nitty gritty of each story. So you thought the movie was a 10 out of 10?
10 out of 10. Well, you know how I was recommending this movie to you.
I was curious after reading the book and watching the movie. I couldn't even imagine how I would receive that movie without knowing the story. So I was really curious to know what you got out of that movie.
The movie I just loved so much because it doesn't explain almost anything about what's going on.
Yeah.
And in that sense, it makes it really creepy. Because you don't know. I mean, I think it might say, I might have known going into it that there's an alien aspect to it, and you kind of get that. It kind of presents that, but that's like all you know. You don't really know anything that the aliens are doing or what's going on, and it makes it really creepy. And it just sets itself up at the very beginning really interestingly too. It gives you a lot of little tidbits, like they've mapped out this whole big thing that's going on, but they are only showing you the parts. They do a really good job of, it really seems like it's a world, the whole world that exists, and they don't over-explain what's going on. They're just showing you things that are happening.
Yeah.
Which in that sense, it's, to me, very good. And the music is really good. The in it is creepy and weird, and everything that happens is weird. Like the very beginning of it, starting out just like slowly, doesn't
The
it like
light
yeah, and it like slowly zooms out and whatever, and it looks like an eyeball, you know, or whatever.
Yeah.
Like they're making, you know, a human, right? And also like practicing English, or like cat
The
caught,
speeches,
catch, you know, that kind of stuff over and over, and like no, you know, that kind of stuff. It was like, what, the whole like intro is minutes long of like, what is this? You know, it's so weird, and I just liked it so much like that. You know, standalone kind of thing, and they don't really show much of what the aliens look like in that movie until, like, you get one like brief glimpse in the middle, but then until the very end, which is very good, I think. You know, it doesn't, you know, spoil anything about that, anything at all. And that's basically it. That's why I give it a 10. I mean, I've probably watched it 3 times now. I watched it once right before reading the book more recently, and I was just like, I just can't find, to me, just watching it by itself, anything wrong with it. In my mind, there's like, I mean, I guess there's dialogue. I guess I was gonna say there's not, but there's really not that much. No, a lot of it is visual stuff going on. And I don't know. That's basically it. I watched it again and was like, I was sucked. I was expecting to be like, oh, you know, some stuff drops off. You know, stuff that with rewatches, even stuff that I really liked a lot, would kind of drop off with subsequent viewings. But like, I was just as sucked into it from the beginning this third time as I ever was.
I mean, I agree with some of the things you said. Why it's good were, they were in my pros column for these are the things that I liked about it, but then I had a cons column as well. It's impossible for me to know what I would have thought of it if I hadn't read the book first. That obviously mapped my interpretation of it, but I still, like, I would have thought that if I watched it without reading the book and knowing the underlying, like, all the world building, that I feel like I mostly would have been confused by the ending.
Which is funny, because that's what I mentioned after we watched The Last Duel. If you remember, I was like, I asked, like, how well could you follow what was going on? Because to me, it didn't seem like it was explaining it enough. But you seemed like you were fine. With
so
it.
I probably would have been okay with it.
Well, yeah.
Let me see. I could get into my pros and cons because I do have a list.
Well, one thing I was going to say was this is the book movie combo that gave us this idea to do this way, because you said you wanted to read this book before you watched the movie as I recommended it, and I was like, no, I don't want you to do that because I don't want you to spoil. I not know myself knowing anything about the book. I didn't know there was a book, but I didn't want you to spoil it because I liked the movie so much and I wanted you to experience it that way. And the only way that I was okay with you doing it in this order was this idea that that I came up with was like, oh, let's do that, and then that's okay. And now I'm disappointed again because it took away a 10.0 perfect movie from me that you gave a 5 because you read the book first and were expecting something from the book.
True.
And that's basically it. Is we talked briefly as I had just started the book, and I was like, they're completely different. Yeah. And to me, having watched the movie first and then the book, it was really easy for me to separate the two and go like, these are two completely different things. And it didn't hurt my score for the book.
I can't imagine, though, that I would give it a 10 out of 10.
No, I don't imagine either. No. I mean, okay, that's one thing too. Why does the audience gave it a 55 audience score on Rotten Tomatoes, which is close to, it's basically your score. I'm more in line with the critics who are at 84%,
which is still even
whatever
lower
it was.
Than what you gave it.
Yeah, 84%. Well, obviously, I don't expect. I mean, 10 out of 10 is. I wasn't expecting to give it that rating, really. I just did. It's just very good that I liked it so much. Anyway.
You explained why it's a 10 out of 10 for you.
Yeah.
I want to get into my pros and cons of the movie.
Yeah, we're talking the movie first, just because that's the point where we're differing so much.
Yeah, that's the huge diversion again, and that'll give us a jumping off point to talk about the book.
Yeah.
So yeah, I had pros for the movie. I know a 5 is not a good score, but for the movie, first of all, I wanted to say that I thought Scarlett Johansson's acting was great.
Oh yeah,
Super good. One of the earliest scenes when she's driving around just talking to the hitchhikers, and she's like really friendly and like, oh, where are you from? Like, who do you live with? And as soon as she finds out they live with someone, her face just goes flat.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It was so good. Yeah, that was a really good acting. And I could see how that would be cool too, where it's like you don't really know what she's up to yet, but it's like you know what's going on. So I thought her acting was great.
Mm-hmm.
Visually super compelling. Like the imagery was stunning and intriguing. Like throughout the whole thing. The one point in particular that like really got me was when she got to her second victim and backed up and drug him under like the black water.
Is that when he went under and saw the other guy under
Yeah,
there?
when he sees the first victim and he's kind of bloated.
Yeah, and his skin is all like wavery and
yeah, and suddenly like everything other than his skin is sucked out of him.
And then he's just skin.
Which also gets into the soundtrack because when that happened all of a sudden and the noise, like that scared me. That was like a horror movie moment.
It's a loud like click, kind of thing.
The visuals on top of the sound and the fact that you don't know what's going on, because I was already like, my eyes were glued to the screen because I was like, what the hell is going on? That he's watching the thing, and I didn't know what was going to happen. And that's a thing where reading the book first didn't ruin that because that's not in the book at all. So even though I was trying to figure out how does this relate to the book, I had no idea where it was going to go because it was already so different.
The only thing there that relates to the book is that after that they showed like the meat sliding down a ramp, which is like it's close to like the idea of what's happening in the book.
Yeah, it kind of hints at that they're like farming.
It hints at it, yeah.
So yeah, again, good soundtrack. There was something, or a score, I guess you call it more, but there was some repeated like noise in the score that anytime something freaky would happen, there was like
yeah.
I thought that was really good.
Yeah.
Good on its own as a thing, but also the repetition of it. Also, overall, I do think that it captured the general idea and the tone of the book because it's similarly disturbing, similarly like compelling and makes you think and wonder. So despite the fact that so many things are different, and it's like you said, loosely based.
Yeah, it's so loose.
Yeah, I would think
it's almost like, okay, they just took the idea of an alien who lures men to their death, and that's it. That is similar, almost. That's almost it. That's similar, other than the biggest picture of broad arc is somewhat similar.
True.
Other than those two things, and then a couple of weird details that for some reason are similar that I will get into at some point later, but. That's about it, and it was to the point where it was surprising to me that they said this was an adaptation, and this book says on it, now a major motion picture. And
I think that's a mistake.
Well, it is, especially if you read this and go, oh, major motion, and then go to watch a movie afterward. You're going to be very disappointed. If you want to see this book made into a movie, you're going to be very disappointed. On the other hand, I think it's cool that they at least gave a nod to the writers and give him, rights, because you could maybe make the argument that, you change a couple little things about the movie and you could make almost the same exact movie with just the slightly same premise and maybe argue that it's its own idea.
Yeah.
So it's cool that they gave that nod, because I'm sure he got some money from that. Right?
But I feel like they should have just said inspired by the book by Michel.
That's true. Faber. Yeah. Does it say that anywhere? This doesn't even on the front of it say. It doesn't say on the front that it's.
Yeah. When you were recommended me this movie, I looked on the back and that's where it said. It mentioned the book. It should say somewhere based on the book.
I didn't know it was.
That's where I looked at it. So, based on the novel by Michel Faber, right here in really small.
The tiny little. Wow, yeah, that's like in the tiny little stuff saying who's all in it and who produced it and stuff.
I don't know how I found that before watching it, but
I know. How did you find that?
Yeah, it should say inspired by, because it's definitely the concept of the book, and I do think it did a good job of like being a similar tone, and like disturbing, but it's like more like a spin-off concept or something like that. Anyway, to get into my cons. this is one of the things you said you liked about the movie, but it was a con for me. I said that it was even more coy with revealing what was going on than the book. And that was something that I disliked about the book, is how coy it was, just with giving us the concept. Because I like that it doesn't give us all the answers. I like that the book, even, it's very much from her perspective, Iserly, even though it sometimes switches to her victim's thoughts in the car. Mm-hmm. But I like that there's no chapter that's like an information dump, world building chapter that's from a third person omniscient.
Yeah.
That's like, these are where the aliens are from.
That would be something that would make it more like a fantasy novel, sci-fi or something, but it really isn't like that.
Yeah. I like that it's not that, but I didn't like how the book was like, it seemed like the whole first half got a little repetitive where she kept picking up victims, and I'm like, okay, I get.
I did kind of think that same thing. There wasn't that much, it seemed like, going on with development or the plot other than picking up more new people, you know.
After like 2 of them, I was like, okay, I get how that works. I want to like see what happens next, know a little bit more. So that was just like a small dislike I had about the book. But then the movie, again, it's hard to judge it as its own thing, but I thought like it didn't. Well, there's so much about the book that it doesn't even touch on. Another con I didn't like about the movie, this is of course based on my reading of the book though, is I didn't like what they did with the character of Iserly. First of all, she doesn't even have a name.
No,
she has
she's
no
not
name.
No name address. I don't think anybody is addressed with a name in this movie.
Yeah, I don't think so.
And no, she's not. She's very much less of a developed character. And that kind of maybe goes in with the alien aspect. Yeah, keeps it a little more alien.
That's what I didn't like.
Because they also have other aliens. I guess in this movie they don't really show any aliens like putting on a human suit or anything. But there's the motorcycle guys.
The motorcycle guy.
There's that one guy, but then when they go search for her, there's multiple of them, and they go off different directions. You remember that?
I didn't notice that. I thought it was just one motorcycle person.
I thought it was multiple. I thought a couple of them met up. Like 3 or something motorcycle people met up and went different directions, and that's all that you get. And they never talk either. Yeah. I mean, she talks, but
she doesn't have very much dialogue. But yeah, I didn't like that she was less human in the movie. Like, she is an alien, but a big twist about the book is that they are the humans.
Yeah, they're referred to as the humans. They refer to themselves as humans.
The aliens call themselves humans, and they call what we think of as humans as vodsels.
Yeah, which I thought was a very good word. I like that word. There's a lot of made-up words, alien words in the book that just take like placeholder for like what you might think of as something that doesn't have a translatable word in English, and they just throw them out, and it's kind of hard to tell whether the author actually had an idea for what those are, or just like throwing out made up words.
The vodsel one's the only clear one.
Vodsel
later.
and Ikpathua.
Oh the thing that she injects.
She injects.
But later there's somewhere
they choose on,
they mention,
as a drug or whatever.
Yeah. But I liked that about the book, just that it was really compelling and made me think of, anyone's place in nature is how, it subverts like what we think of as human as, and then they don't think of what we think of as humans. Mm-hmm. So then, I don't know, that's where the movie fell flat for me, is like, because she felt less human. I don't know, it just didn't have as much of a dimension there where I felt as much. Yeah,
well, they added it. They do it a different way, right? They do it as they present her more as alien, and so when she starts to kind of, that's what's different about the movie. The book, she doesn't really have an identity crisis where she starts to think that she's maybe a human, our human. Yeah. In the movie, that's what it happens. Is she kind of
because she falls in love, kind of.
She kind of starts to have sympathy for. People, and one guy that she brings back, she's then after, she talks to him more, and his situation is like a sympathetic situation, because he's got his like deformed kind of face or whatever that he's got, and then after that she's coming down the stairs and sees herself in the mirror, and is kind of like herself in the mirror for is kind of like stays there for a little bit, and then that's when she's like goes off, she leaves by herself. Like she
abandons her job.
And goes and
Yeah.
Figures that kind of stuff out, and then even goes and has that, maybe that guy finds her and helps her out. She's staying there, and they start to have a relationship, and then they start to have sex.
But she realizes she doesn't have genitals.
Yeah, and
that's
then
how I
interpreted
that.
Right, yeah, exactly. And then she's like, "Oh no!" And that's her crisis moment of, "Uh-oh,
I'm something different.
I'm not a human."
Yeah,
but
I can see how it's definitely an interpretation of the same themes, like an alien perspective on what it means to be human, basically. Mm-hmm. So yeah, whereas I can see some of those things as positives, to assert even more of my 5 out of 10 opinion.
Yeah.
Although the movie captures a lot of the like grotesque stuff, the disturbing stuff, and it makes you think about the same themes. For me, I felt that Glazer's interpretation missed. For me, what was so compelling about the book, that Iserly is a human, and she's not confused about what she is or what's going on. Maybe she's confused about what she wants to do in life, and maybe even her place in nature. So I felt she was more relatable in the book.
Oh, yeah.
So, I don't know, that's just something that I missed out on.
Yeah, I mean, again, all this stuff is like, they're not even the same. The movie is not even attempting to be the book, really.
This is something that I couldn't help but I tried to look up if Michel Faber said anything publicly about what he thought of the book.
Okay.
Because I was just like secretly hoping he would sort of talk trash about the book in the
movie.
I mean, the movie, yes. Yeah. Yeah, the movie adaptation, because I was like, that was so different. I really want to know what the author thought of what he did with the movie, of his story. I thought maybe he would talk poorly about it, like how Stephen King apparently has talked bad about The Shining by Kubrick.
Yeah.
He didn't like the ending.
Yeah.
But the one interview I found, a written interview, he basically said he liked it. He said he would rather have a good movie that takes wild liberties than a movie that's faithful, that's not well done.
Right. Well,
which I agree with,
because I don't know how this movie could be done well enough to do this book justice.
Yeah.
There's so much in it, because so much of it takes place similar to a lot of Stephen King, in my opinion. Why Stephen King movies in general aren't good or would be hard to do well is because so much of what happens takes place in a character's mind. A lot of stuff. There's a lot of inner dialogue, and that's a lot of this book. It takes place in Iserly's mind, which I'm glad your pronunciation in your head is the same.
Yours was Iserly.
Was Iserly, and well, mine was, and the only thing that made me question it was one time somebody refers to her as Iss, I-S-S, and that's what made me think that, well, that's probably not Eyes. Yeah, it could be maybe her name is Iserly because it's I-S-S, which could be Iserly.
Yeah,
but Iserly sounds good to me.
Yeah, same. Okay, that's good. After Adam Lovell or Lovell being different. It's good we got one.
Well, actually, to talk about that, to circle back on a Last Duel situation, the whole time, because I don't know French very well, the whole time I was reading the book, I was thinking it was Carouge. But then I watched the movie and it was Carouge.
I think in my head, even though I'd seen the movie, I would mostly, I don't know, elide more and be like Corot. Just something easier for me to just read over quickly.
Mm-hmm. Do you have more cons?
Let's see. I just other stuff about how I mentioned that it should have said inspired by the novel instead of based on.
Yeah.
Which
I don't even think in watching the movie, like before or after in the credits. Maybe it's somewhere hidden in the credits, but it's not featured anywhere that it's a book.
It just I don't know. It just felt like, I mean, I know it's purposeful, but it felt like the director read the book once and was like, that was awesome, and then just wrote the script without ever looking back at the book.
I think
just
it was
to capture the same feeling.
Yeah, similar idea, but that's about it.
But yeah, to agree with what you were saying about how if they tried to be really faithful, it probably wouldn't work. Mm-hmm. As a movie, it would probably suffer the same way Stephen King adaptations do. And also, going into it, I was thinking, like, if they do half the stuff that's in this book, it's going to be really gory. Like, it's going to be very graphic.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of glad they didn't put in all the graphic stuff in the book, because it gets pretty graphic. Which, I mean, it's meant to be, like, disturbing a little bit, but it doesn't need to be super graphic in a movie. Yeah. that's pretty much my notes on the movie. We could talk about the book more.
Yeah, which we generally we are very close on that score.
Yeah, that's interesting. Again. Let's see.
Obviously, yeah, we both really liked it. Obviously, that's a high score. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know. It was a really good story. I thought, a lot of the stuff was interesting. The only like downside really that I saw about the book was that all of the messaging is pretty blatant. Whereas I do kind of like something that's a little more subtle in the messaging, which is maybe why I like the movie a little bit better.
Yeah.
But it's pretty blatantly obvious that the way that they turn it over and say that the aliens call themselves humans and they call us Vodsels, and we got Amlis Vess who's like protesting the eating of Vodsels because they're intelligent living beings or whatever. And he, like sets some of them free. It's very much on the nose for what the messaging is. And that's the only thing I didn't like about it. Otherwise, all of that stuff is done well. And it's, to me, a unique way that it's done. Which I really like.
Yeah, obviously we gave a similar score, but it was more the repetitiveness at the beginess for me that made it like not quite great. And some of the... Well, no, that's fine. But I almost felt the same about the on-the-noseness. Like, it would have been worse if it went a little further with it. Because there were points when I thought, like, oh, this is going to turn into, like, a book that's like, you should go vegan or you should be a vegetarian. But it didn't turn into that at all. So I thought it could have gone more down the route of, like, Amlis Vess is right and we should not eat animals. Right. But it wasn't because Iserly is the main character and she kind of brushed off that whole thing. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I agree with what you said. It was like a well done original take on something, even if it's a little on the nose at times. I have outside of the book and movie recommendation. If you haven't read the short story In the Penal Colony by Franz Kafka, I recommend that. The scene when Iserly decides she wants to watch how they do the surgery on the Vodsels reminded me of that story. So in Under the Skin, it's where after the guy tries to rape her, then she's mad at the Vodsels, so she wants to witness how they do the surgery. And it was pretty grotesque how they, slit the throat, cut out the tongue, castrate them. So that was disturbing and really, visual in the way it's written. And it reminded me of In the Penal Colony, which is a short story where it's been a while since I read it, so I don't remember all the specifics, but it's just a scene like that where there's one person who's like an outsider witnessing how this culture punishes people who've done a crime. And it's this big weird contraption that like tortures them and like writes the crime they did in their skin or something. And it's really like it's a horror story and it's vivid and it's, I don't know, makes you think in a similar way.
Well, yeah, no. And I thought this was good because it was very, again, on the nose to... factory farming or how an animal would be slaughtered. It was like the, same thing that might happen there,
True. Yeah, how the Vodsels are...
they're first taken in, they're castrated, they're fattened up.
They're looking for the big ones already.
And then they're just slaughtered.
Yeah, and they're even kept in cages for a while where they mature and everything, and they're just in there.
Yeah, and they're even talking in that way, like, don't get any scratches on their ankles because their feces fall near there and the wounds could fester. Yeah,
and then you can't eat the meat.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, overall, there were times in the middle where I thought a similar thing where it was going to be a little on the nose about like animal rights, basically, or like what. But then towards the ending, I feel like it took an interesting turn in terms of like how it kind of meditated on our place in nature. After she escapes the job, similar thing to the movie, and she kind of reluctantly picks up that last hitchhiker because he's like, I need to get to the hospital, my wife's giving birth. And they start having this conversation about what they think happens after you die. And then when they crash, and I think Iserly basically figures out that when someone comes to help, they're going to find out that she's an alien. So she presses the self-destruct button on the car, and everything evaporates all the evidence. And then it says something about her, transcending, a very transcendental ending.
She's thinking about her atoms, joining, the nature of this world that she has come to kind of love.
Yeah, she was going to stay there. She basically chose to stay there. And I mean, I thought that was interesting how they, without saying as much of it, showed that in the movie, how it takes away her choice because the rapist catches her on fire, but you see her ashes, floating up into nature. So it's a similar idea.
I didn't even think about that idea about the ashes floating up in it, because they don't give any of her thoughts in the movie. Like, you can't have any of that like they have in the book. And I thought actually I had the same, note on the difference between the endings is in the movie, it's not her choice. Yeah. In the movie, it's kind of it's more of a downer. It's more of a tragedy. It's
a little more cynical.
Because she is, she confronts her conflict, her inner conflict of, she comes up with that, like, I am not a human. Let me go walk in the woods and see what's going on. And then,
And then she's not accepted by the humans,
guy,
basically.
Yeah, basically that guy, again, that it even comes more crashing down as that guy tries to rape her and rips her skin, and it comes off, and there she is. One of the coolest visuals in the movie, in just sleek black humanoid-ish, alien,
and then
just
holding the skin,
looking at the face, confronted directly with, no, this is not who I am, not who I was becoming, who I thought I was. And then amidst the lowest of the low, against her will, gets set on fire and dies. Not very good. But whereas in the book, that ending is, she has made her choice to not go back to the farm. Yeah. She's made her, she confronted her situation of, like, this is a problem for me. This is a conflict. And she made her choice. Let me not go back to the farm. She didn't make a choice for, like you kind of said before, doesn't know what she wants to do. Yeah. She just knows she didn't want to do that. So her choice was just not that. So she got to make that choice. And even when she crashed, she got to be the one to blow herself up and be okay with the ending. So in that way, it was a kind of a, it's not a happy ending, but it's a happier ending.
Yeah, it's more of a freedom thing.
Yeah, and I did like the ending of this as a book. Was very good. But those are definitely the differences there.
Okay, yeah. So there was the difference in the ending. Mm-hmm. Anything else to say about the book or differences?
I really liked a lot of stuff about the book. Obviously 8.2 is a very high score too. And we kind of talked about all the stuff that it brings to light, the switching us and what makes you think about what is it to be a human, also what is it to be an animal, because they see humans as animals, and so that forces us as the reader to think about ourselves as animals,
and how we think of other animals,
and also kind of how we think of humans by looking at these. And it worked out really well how what the aliens look like, because he made them almost as far as you could get from being a human, kind of, four-legged, different face, all fur everywhere, tail, so that you could see, like, okay, look at that as a human, and there's a lot of stuff that brings to light. They talk about and the stuff that we in nature maybe even take for granted, like, oh, we have all this oxygen and water everywhere. That's a big part of about the movie, where Amlissa goes out for the first time and seeing, like, clouds and rain and snow and the sea, and is like, what the heck, this is crazy. When one thing that I thought is how it brings to light the idea of, like, beauty and stuff like that too, because she's really concerned about the fact that she's been deformed,
but the Vodsels think she's attractive,
right?
And then she thinks that
Amlis is really attractive. But what we're reading that, and she's like, oh man, he's so attractive, and it's just like this monster that we're reading the description of. It makes us go, like,
I liked that scene.
What is that like when we describe something as beautiful? It's so relative. That
it makes you think about the standards of beauty, because she's like, this guy's obviously attractive. I mean, he's like 4 feet tall, 4 legs, lush fur all over. Yeah. And you're like, what?
Yeah.
It sounds like you're describing a horse, like a small horse.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then also one thing that I wrote down was that about, like, what are our standards on what animals are okay to eat. When her horror at Analys's suggestion that they might eat sheep. Right, because they look so much closer to how they look.
Oh yeah,
because they're four-legged.
They walk on four legs, so you can't eat that.
Yeah, which is like, well, that's kind of the animals we decide to eat and not. Like
you would need a gorilla.
Yeah, but only because they look closer to us.
Yeah, or animals we domesticated, like a cat or a dog.
Right, exactly. That same kind of thing where
even though people keep chickens as pets, in a way, but we eat chickens. So yeah, it just makes you think about that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and then. One of the similarities that I thought was interesting, a weird detail that they made, that they kept between the two, was what the guy looked like who tried to rape her in both. At the end, he's just wearing the yellow reflective thing.
Yeah, that was the thing in the book because the Ikpatwa thing couldn't break through it because it was too thick, so she couldn't sedate him. Yeah, that's why he was able to. Yeah, that is weird that they kept that visual thing.
Only that part though, because he was
never in the car, so it didn't even. Actually, they didn't even have the.
She didn't. That's not how she did it in the movie. It's so weird. She had to seduce them back in, and she could walk behind over the liquid or whatever, and they walk down into it.
Yeah.
So very different, which is why that part was oh, that's interesting. They clearly that was on purpose. And maybe just as an Easter egg. For people who had read the book.
So you know that it's that guy, in a way.
Maybe, but they weren't even at the same points in the arc or the story. In the movie, it was at the very end. In the book, it's in the middle.
A middle thing. Yeah, that's why actually in the movie, when she's sort of falling in love with the guy that's helping her, I was confused because...
Well, that didn't even happen, right?
Yeah, that's not even in the book. So I was trying to make the connection when I was like, oh, maybe this is the version instead of the rape scene, because that's when she found out she didn't have genitals.
Oh, gotcha, yeah.
She already knew in the book that she didn't because she had the surgery done, but that's when we learned that because she kind of tells us that he's not going to find anything, so she has to distract him and then hit him. So then when that guy showed up with the yellow jacket and everything, and then he started to chase her. It was going to be the rape scene. I was like, oh, it is still in there. Mm-hmm. It just made me rethink it because I thought that guy was going to be in the place of that whole part of the plot.
Yeah, and it's obviously that's the only detail that's the same because in the book she kills him. And that's part of a big crisis point for her in the book is that happening because that's when she goes back and wants to see wants to see how they are processed and everything because she needs some kind of revenge.
Yeah, it's she's cheering it on.
This emotional
cathartic
moment.
Yeah.
Which I think that comes up later when she's talking to some of the guys at the place where something about emotions comes up. Where
the other workers?
Yeah, the other workers kind of more emotionless and doing whatever, which to me was the closest they got to in the book an arc of her being more like a Vodsel, a human, is all the emotions that she has
because everyone else is a little more detached.
Everyone else is a little detached about what's going on. But yeah, I mean, other than kind of the general arc that we kind of already talked about, the end of it or whatever, there's a lot of stuff details that I like about the book that are interesting, which I'm almost surprised that this book isn't more popular because it seems like a book that could be pop culture thing. There's so many things in it that are interesting that people would just so many things you can reference that are only that are unique to this book, that are really good, I don't want to take my glasses off because I have my giant alien eyes behind there, and doing the stretches every day, having to do
limbering up,
limber up, all that kind of stuff. And I mean, so many things, I don't know, there's little things that came out that were good. There was one chapter, this was just for me or whatever, but one chapter ends with something just like a Vodsel. And it just made me think of Bob Dylan's Just Like a Woman.
Okay.
She aches just like a Vodsel. And she breaks just like a human being, or something,
Yeah, I agree. I hadn't thought of it that much, but yeah, I feel like it could be really popular. And I don't know why it didn't. Because it seems like science fiction fans would like it. but also people who aren't into science fiction would like it because it doesn't do the world building.
Well, and maybe that's it. Maybe most readers want more of a world building out of a science fiction or fantasy.
So it's a little too in between.
Maybe
sci-fi fans are like, it's not quite sci-fi enough. Horror fans are like, not quite horror.
Yeah, because it isn't scary. It's weird and stuff like that. But yeah,
true. Anything else, or you want to get to final recommendations?
Yeah, I think we can get to final recommendations.
All right, conclusions and final recommendations. I have a feeling our recommendations are going to be different here. Pretty sure, because our book scores were so similar and movie scores pretty different. Again, of course, I gave the book an 8.5, the movie a 5 out of 10. But as for a recommendation, I actually would say to read the book first, because the book is really good. I think it's really good, almost great. Then if you're interested in watching the movie, just make sure you go into it with an open mind, ready to accept a different interpretation of the same concept and themes.
Yeah, I would say the opposite, because I would say watch the movie first. The movie is good by itself as just a movie. And then when you read the book, yeah, you can find some similarities, but very quickly, it's, at least for me, was very easy to go, this is completely different. It's something completely different. And it didn't ruin the movie at all for me, and it didn't ruin the book, obviously, from the scores. So that would be my recommendation is watch the movie first and then read the book, and you will like both of them.
Well, now it's up to you, viewer, because we both said a different thing. I said read the book, watch the movie. He says watch the movie and then read the book. What are you going to do?
All right, so let's find out our scores
Average
on that.
the scores.
Well, I mean, the average on the book there, 8.2, 8.5, right? So we got an 8.3.
3.5, right?
3.5, yep, 8.35.
8.35 for the book. That's good. And compared to...
We saying it's underrated.
Yeah, because the
book is underrated.
Score was 3.73 times 2 is, 8.5, basically? Or not 8.5, 7. Yeah, not even 8 yet.
A little 7.5, yeah. So.
Yeah. So the book is underrated. It should be popular.
Yeah.
It's a good book.
Which is what we said, at the end of our, synopsis and everything is... It should be better.
Yeah, book's underrated. Check that out.
And then the movie, what did you give? A 5? Just
5.
a straight 5? So 7.5 is our score for the movie.
Okay. I'm okay with that.
Which kind of ends up on the higher end, a little more towards what the critics from Rotten Tomatoes, the percentage at least.
Because they were in 80s.
They were 84. With the critics and 55 with the audience. So we're not quite right in between. We're a little towards the high end, but that was... My score pulled it way up.
Yeah. I think that's a fair balanced score, though, because obviously you, with your taste, loved the movie more than probably some people. Yeah, but then I was probably too harsh on the movie because I read the book first and I really liked the book. So for average viewers, 7.5. It's a good movie.
So we would say average for average viewers, the audience score, the movie is underrated.
Underrated for sure. Yeah.
But for critics have overrated.
Slightly overrated. Yeah. Maybe they didn't read the underrated book. But little underrated by viewers. So check out the movie. It's good. Check out the underrated book as well because it is almost great. It's nearly great. All right, we know it's only the second episode, but we want to introduce our ongoing rankings, something we're going to do at the end, or toward the end of every episode. We're going to show you the progress we've made in rating and recommending books and movies, overall lists of how we rate them all compared to each other.
Yep, so here's a bunch of stats on the screen right now. Go ahead and look at it. The clear thing that stands out to us, the clearest thing is it seems, combined rankings that we recommend Under the Skin in both forms over The Last Duel.
Definitely. Under the Skin in general, better than The Last Duel.
And in both cases, the book is better than the movie.
Yep. So Under the Skin book, Under the Skin movie in second place, Last Duel book, and then coming in last place so far is The Last Duel movie. In terms of our combined scores, at least.
Yeah. I was trying to look to see, and I don't know how much of this we might cut out. but look to see, in terms of my rankings, I don't really have a pattern on whether I like the movie or the book better. Well, we could talk about so what we had noticed is we tend to like, just after 2, we like better the one that we saw or read first.
Yeah.
Right?
That was an idea I thought might happen going into this experimental series, is that, sometimes people say the book is always better than the movie. I thought, what if maybe whichever one we experience first, we might tend to favor that one just because it was our first experience of whatever the thing was.
Yeah, and with only 2 under our belt.
That's the pattern so far.
That's the pattern so far. The other pattern I thought was interesting was what seems to happen is that what it looks like, at least, is based on the fact that our book scores for both are so close, is that the book is not ruined by watching the movie first, but the movie may be ruined by watching the book first. Is what it looks like.
Yeah.
But we'll find out as we go along.
Yeah, we'll see if that persists.
So far, this is it's astounding to me how close we are on our book scores.
Yeah, there's something strange about that. I don't know. I think it might be, you spend more time with a book, over days and days. So
that's what would have thought that we could be further apart. That's true. Because there's so much more that we could glean something more different interpretation from.
Yeah.
Because I don't know. That's what I thought. That was what was surprising to me. But our furthest gap in book and movie scores is 0.3 on Under the Skin.
That's pretty well. But our farthest movie gap, gap,
is
right?
5 points.
5
from 5 to 10. That's pretty ridiculous.
I have a feeling that will change. There's going to be a movie where we're both like, yeah, it was good, about the same, and then there's going to be a book that, like, I love it, you hate it, you love it, I hate it. It's going to happen.
It has to, basically.
At least once. Even if it's an outlier, it'll happen.
All right.
So that's where we stand right now. Stay tuned.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that'll do it for this week. Let us know what you think. Who's right? Yeah. What do you think if you have read or watched either of them? Let us know in the comments. Like and subscribe and
hit the bell so you get notifications every time we put out a new video. We're going to be making more in this series. Maybe comment below what you think we should read or watch. Some of your recommendations. Yeah, and if you see something on the screen now that's videos that you can click on, eventually we'll have other videos. Eventually they'll be there. If not, all we have right now is 2, but there will be more. So if you read this, if you watch it, let us know what you think in the comments. Which one's better? And thank you for watching. See you next time. Bye.